Hello, sound test. Make sure that we are able to be heard.
Allegedly.
Let's make sure that we are heard.
Are we heard? Are we believed?
Let's give them a minute to respond.
Yeah, because right now it's still on the thing for me.
Yeah, there's always a little delay.
How much of a delay, should you say?
Right.
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, good. Then we are rocking and or rolling. Hello, everybody. I am Raven Knight, joined by my brother Leggett Lark, and we are here to talk about this absolute awful article. Okay, so
just the worst take.
Little background. So I got sent this article through my Discord, through my lovely fans on Discord, and they asked me to crusade against this. I planned to, but then I saw that a guy named Archcast already did a very long response to it, and I thought, yeah, well, I thought like, I don't know if we should. He went on a 2.5 hour talk on it, and if he went that deep into it, maybe we don't need to go that deep into it. But people were still saying, no, I need to respond. So me and Lark read over it, and after reading over just over half of it, we were like, no, this is terrible. This is absolutely terrible. So we decided, yes, we need to respond to this. That this is something we need to respond to. So we are going to react to this. This is probably the worst. Look, here's the thing. We've seen some bad takes on a lot of games. But this may be the worst take we've ever seen on not just Space Marine 2, but on Space Marines in general.
I don't know, just anything.
This is one of the worst takes we've ever seen. It is so embarrassingly bad. We're kind of amazed that it exists.
It's bad enough Wisecrack might hire this guy.
Yeah, like even Wisecrack would be impressed with this. Like this is a special kind of awful. So let's not waste any more time. Let's dive right into it. I'm going to go ahead and switch us over to response format.
We have a response format now.
All right. This is now you can see the screen, and you can see the title of this article we're taking a look at. Why play a fascist? Unpacking the hideousness of the Space Marine from rockpapershotgun.com.
Scroll back. PC gaming since 1873.
I don't think PCs have been around since 1873. I'm pretty sure.
Not sure. That might be a little tongue-in-cheek.
That might be a little tongue-in-cheek, yeah. But, okay, so already the title itself is kind of fun. Why play a fascist? Unpacking the hideousness of the Space Marine. First of all, are Space Marines or the Imperium fascist? I would argue no. Like, they are not fascist.
I mean, it depends on how you define fascist.
Well, again, the kind of people who write this way, who talk this way, are the kind of people who throw the word fascist around to mean anything I don't like.
It's a buzzword at that point, but I mean, authoritarian are they? Definitely. Do they match all the hallmarks of fascism? No, they've actually had a state be successful for more than a decade. So,
I mean, but let's just see what they have to say. Maybe they'll explain as we go forward. Featured by Evans Thurwell, news editor. Oh boy, this guy.
Pray for this man.
Pray for this man. He
needs it.
Yeah. All right. Let's read it. In order to make Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2 enjoyable, Saber Interactive had to make the Space Marines less like Space Marines. That's to say, less like, quote, semi-lobotomized, hypnotically indoctrinated slave soldiers enthralled to an uncaring and possibly non-existent god, in the words of Rick Presley, primary writer for the original Warhammer 40,000 Rogue Trader rulebooks back in the 1980s. I already see a huge problem in this first paragraph. First of all, Rick Presley's words, if we click on this, because this leads us to a link where we can see what Rick Presley actually said. What Rick Presley said was, I don't think any of us thought about what we were doing in such quite depth at the time. Great read, though, and it made me smile. One aspect of characterization that I feel is often missed in Warhammer is that many of the invented personalities and cultures have a deliberately self-deceived quality. What they are and what they believe themselves to be are in conflict, and ultimately that gives you the idea of troll slayers, which is uniquely and almost definitively one of Richard Hollowell's finest concepts. I don't think we took ourselves all that seriously or felt the need to do so, though. The 40,000 universe was certainly conceived in the same spirit. It always amuses me that the Games Workshop mail order trolls, as we starting with me, had always styled ourselves, insisted as being rebranded Space Marines. Why anyone would want to be associated with semi-lobotomized, hypnotically indoctrinated slave soldiers enthralled to an uncaring and possibly non-existent god, I couldn't imagine, but times change, don't they? So he's already acknowledging two things. Number one, they didn't take themselves that seriously when they started the concept of Space Marines in Warhammer 40k. And two, he acknowledges times have changed, and the way the product has changed is relevant.
And this is a big thing I want to point out to like anyone's like it's satire. It was originally like because they always bring up like it was anti-Margaret Thatcher satire back in the day. I'm like, yeah, but it was a lot more tongue-in-cheek kind of parody satire back then. And now it's evolved into something a little more serious, and I think this guy's even going to mention that.
Well, what I think is so interesting is, okay, let's look at each of these. Semi-lobotomized. I don't know what semi-lobotomized means. You're either lobotomized or you're not.
I mean, if you're an iron hand.
I guess. Hypnotically indoctrinated slave soldiers. I know that during the process of making a Space Marine, they are put on hypnomats, but the hypnosis is meant to help them get accustomed to their body. Like
it does various things. There is conditioning. There is psychic conditioning.
Right.
So
and then enthralled to an uncaring and possibly non-existent god.
That's not true. The God Emperor loves us.
Well, think about what the God Emperor is doing. He is going through constant agonizing torture every day just to keep the Imperium running, just to keep us alive. And what about the Sororitas who are constantly praying to the God Emperor and through their very faith gaining miracles? What about when the God Emperor possessed Gilliman to bitch slap Nurgle and save him from Mortarion and even offered to redeem Mortarion? Like, you can't argue the God Emperor doesn't care.
I mean, also, like, one thing somebody pointed out, like into the end and the death after, like, he couldn't see what was going to happen anymore. He just defaulted to, I'm going to protect as many as I can.
Right, literally.
So, it's not that he doesn't care, it's that in certain cases he's incapable of
right.
it. So.
Okay, let's keep going. In Warhammer 40,000, supposedly satirical, definitely grimdark Imperium of Man, the Space Marines are the genetically engineered sons and warrior monks of the Emperor, a messianic figure reduced to a dreaming corpse on the Golden Throne, whose immense psychic emissions serve as a kind of spirit lighthouse for interstellar travel. Okay, so far so good. The Space Marines are grotesque supermen clad in motorized armor who exist to exterminate the alien, the mutant, and the unclean. Okay.
Best.
They are the ultimate embodiment of patriarchal, xenophobic fascism.
Oh, boy. Okay, so, first of all, patriarchal, I suppose you could argue that.
Well, in order for it to be patriarchal, wouldn't there have to be women for them to rule over?
I mean, I guess they do technically, but there's actually, like, are cases of women ordering Space Marines around,
yeah.
There's one of the Grey Knight books. You have a female Inquisitor that works closely with the Grey Knights. But regardless of that, like, okay, fine, got dudes are in charge, whatever. Xenophobic. I mean, have you seen what they fight?
You know, whenever people like this accuse the Imperium of being xenophobic as a bad thing, they never explain the context of the xenophobia. Because whenever they say, why would you support a xenophobic faction? My response is always, why are they xenophobic? What possible reason could they have for being xenophobic? They never want to answer that because then they have to acknowledge what the orcs are, what the Tyranids are, what the Tau are, what the Necrons are. Like, these are threats. They are trying to destroy humanity. They have every reason not to trust these aliens. They have every reason not to like them. You can't, but xenophobia is bad. Yes, in our time, in our world, in our real life definition of xenophobia, yes, xenophobia is bad, but in the context of Warhammer 40k, they have every reason to be xenophobic.
Yeah, and I mean, are you going to tell a guy that's like, his world is like a popular raiding spot for Dark Eldar and they just do the most horrific things to humankind?
Yeah.
And you're going to tell him, hey man, don't be xenophobic. He's going to be like, have you seen the Xenos? Of course I'm phobic.
And then fascism. Again, prove to me you don't actually know what that word means. Like, I get the feeling that a lot of people who, like this guy, and this guy looks like the kind of dude who would use fascism as a buzzword, don't actually know what it means. They just throw it around. The Imperium is awfully successful for a fascist society.
Yeah, most fascist societies don't last long because they kind of just pick better out and die, and because they typically bite off far more than they can chew. I mean, realistically, I think it's best to look at the Imperium as like a theocratic, an authoritarian theocracy.
Yeah, authoritarian theocracy, I think, is the best way to look at it.
A massive feudal state, because one world might be that sort of fascist nightmare you think, and the other world might be not so dissimilar from ours.
Yeah. Well, this is a source of some irony, given that they themselves barely qualify any longer as human, according to the ideals of uncorrupted humanity they champion. I mean, you're half right there. They barely qualify. They don't fully qualify as human anymore. They're both human and yet not human.
That is something that is brought up in some of the books.
Yeah, so. Like they're beyond human. Like, let's be real. All right, moving on. It's very hard to imagine how they live their lives, Space Marine 2's creative director Oliver Hollis Lake told me in an interview shortly after the shooter launched in September. Quote, they're so far from our daily lives and concerns, and we had to find a way to bridge that extreme mentality with something more human that could be connected to by fans. by audiences, by players, so that we could actually make sense of their story, rather than them just being fanatical killing machines because it's hard to like those characters.
Sure?
Well, okay, so what Oliver in this interview is probably saying is, we have a situation where we're telling the story of individuals whose whole life is killing. They are soldiers not only by career, but by livelihood. This is how they live. It's not always easy to identify with that kind of character, so they wanted to tell a story about these kind of characters, but more empathetic, that we could actually relate to and understand. I don't think it's that hard to do. Many books have done this before.
Yeah, there's plenty of Space Marine books that do. Like Dante is like one comes to mind. Is like Dante's very much relatable.
Right. So I don't think it's that difficult. But I mean, I don't see the problem with what he said. Like, look, a Marine over in Afghanistan or a soldier in World War II, their life is much different than mine. You see, we have the luxury of waking up in the morning, eating breakfast, going to our usual job, just kind of rocking it out, just doing our job day to day, coming back home. Relaxing, choosing what we want to do with the rest of our day, that kind of thing. But a soldier can't do that. A soldier has to consider what they're going to be fighting, how they're going to live, standing by their brother in arms, that kind of thing. So, I don't know. I feel like... Am I crazy for saying that I feel like this doesn't really help his case?
No, it really doesn't, but of course he's grasping at straws already.
All right, let's see. In particular, of course, Saber want you to like the Space Marines under your control, protagonist Demetrium Titus and his subordinates Chiron and Gadriel. Together, says Hollis Lake, the trio form a, quote, a window into the difficult life of a Space Marine where, quote, there's a threat of corruption on every side, it's a real threat, and you have to be firm and unwavering, and then if you get on the right side of them, there's this absolute brotherhood and sacrifice that you get from it, end quote. Without spoiling too much, there's a mistrust within the team. Chiron and Gadriel suspect Titus of being tainted by the swirling cosmic realm of chaos, a seedbed for demons and sorcery. But the game tempers their zealotry, both in terms of the plot, which, as you'd expect from an action game, mires them in the moment of battle with overwhelming swarms of insect monsters, and in terms of how they talk. Okay, but to be fair, it was only Gadriel who really didn't trust Titus.
Yep.
But there were a lot of other reasons he didn't trust Titus. Like, a lot of reasons.
Yeah, his introduction was a little sketch, so he had reason to be a little hesitant. But at the same time, I liked everybody involved. I don't think that any of Saber's big changes, the minute ones that they are, really impacted. I think if they had followed Game Workshop thing to the letter, I think that it would have been just
right.
fine.
But anyway, Hollis Lake and narrative director Craig Sherman pushed back on some of the do's and don'ts they received from Games Workshop about Space Marine vocabulary. They deviated from the suggested phraseology to make Titus and his comrades sound less strange and antiquated, less like the Spanish Inquisition, and more like soldiers from real-world present-day militaries. Quote, Space Marines don't necessarily say things like dismissed, Hollis Lake observed. There's a line in the game where Akarin says company dismissed, and they really wanted me to change that to brothers attend your duties or something. But it's 3 words instead of 1, and if that model was applied to all the language in the game, I really strongly felt that people wouldn't get it.
That's the thing. I think people would get it.
Yeah.
I just think it flows better.
Yeah, I think the issue there is, it's not a big deal. It's more of just Space Marines talk this way, and if you're not a big fan of Warhammer, you're not familiar with it, it may sound a little weird to you, but honestly, I could have seen it go either way. It's not a big deal. This is not a big deal. All right. It's saying something about how accustomed I am to the ostensibly parodic figure of the Space Marine being portrayed as a hero that I didn't really question this desire to make you like and get the fanatical killing machine at the time. To be clear, I don't think Saber are deliberately and consciously trying to kindle empathy for literal fascist enforcers in Space Marine 2.
Yeah, that's the normal take.
That's the correct take to have.
Because you're the weird one for looking at this and going, fascist!
See, I think that these are the kind of people who they don't look at a game and see, ooh, looks fun. They go, does it have fascism?
Well, the thing is, he's not even looking at that.
Oh, didn't mean to do that. Keep talking.
What he wants, and people like him want, is they can't enjoy media, truly, unless it is this long, whinging tirade that supports their political viewpoints. Because as we go through this, I wish I had my bingo sheet with me, because he is going to say probably a lot of political random talking points that have nothing to do with Space Marines or with 40K.
Right.
It's just, he has to get them out because as a left-winger, he has to write the long-winded left-wing meme. So pray for us as we go through this arduous task of reading a left-wing article.
Literally. Much of the above reasoning is grounded in ostensibly neutral, best practice-y questions of craft and characterization. You know what? I know you're making jokes about it, but I'm going to go ahead and pull this up. Pray for me as I read a leftist. Can we just get that, and every time he gets like that, we can just pull this up for the screen?
Where is it?
Where is it? Where is it?
Oh, come on.
Come on, you can't hide this.
It's got like Christopher Columbus Doge. We need that.
Where is it? Where's the meme?
Try left-wing meme instead of leftist.
Left wing. It's gotta be it.
There it is.
Here it is. Okay, pray for me as I take this long and arduous journey to read this left-wing meme. I'm going to have this image ready to go anytime this guy gets like this. All right.
Well, another thing I think we can also direct to is notice how the game developer said, hey, we decided to take this long verbose statement and then reduce it down to make it more palatable and easier to understand. And this man proves he was right by being as long-winded as possible.
God damn. All right, here we go. Let's keep going. Still, it would have been useful to dig into what it means to make Space Marines likable, because Warhammer 40,000 today has an issue with certain groups of players actively identifying with them. Exactly how far this extends is unclear, but the game's fascist subculture is significant enough that Games Workshop have felt moved to publish statements disavowing outright bigots and reminding the tabletop community that the Imperium of Man is a send-up of fascism, of empire, and of murderous patriarchs, not an endorsement.
Oh yes, Schrodinger's satire once again at work.
We did the first Warhammer 40K response video we did was on a situation like this, where this dude decided to be a troll, dress up in Nazi paraphernalia, paint all of his minis in Nazi-style uniforms, and go to a tournament in Spain, and all he was looking for was a rise and a reaction, and that's exactly what he got.
Yeah.
All Warhammer 40,000 had to do was just publicly say, we don't approve of this person and we're banning him from any future tournaments, move on. They didn't have to say anything. The idea of them saying, hey, just a reminder, the Imperium of Man is satire. It's not supposed to be taken seriously. You're not supposed to like it. I'm like, that's so pointless.
Yeah, that's the thing. I was like, satire. It's satire. Please don't sue us. That's basically what it is.
Anyway, the company's outspokenness is praiseworthy. It really isn't. And there's the argument that much of this is out of their hands. Every community harbors extremists who read against the grain.
So just ignore them.
Exactly. Just don't give them any attention. But Games Workshop are also guilty of hypocrisy here, in that modern-day Warhammer 40,000 is a far cry from the satire it once claimed to be.
So them calling out and saying, like, hey, it's a satire kind of rings hollow now, doesn't it?
Yeah, so if you're acknowledging that it's no longer satire, then stop trying to claim it's satire.
Let me have my Space Marines.
Like, okay. We need to address the satire thing real quick before we go any further. I'm going to highlight this spot so that I know where we picked up. But everyone calls it satire. I'm going to go ahead and address this. Satire, at its core, is not just extreme. People think, no, satire is just extreme. No, satire is criticism. Satire, at the end of the day, is a criticism. It can be jovial, it can be subtle, it can be silly, it can be extreme, but at the end of the day, satire is a criticism. And there can be things about Warhammer 40K that you can criticize satirically. But what Space Marines do, what do Space Marines fundamentally do? They destroy threats to humanity. Now, yes, sometimes they go too far. Sometimes they do things that we wouldn't do today. But fundamentally, the role of the Space Marine is to protect humanity by fighting the enemies of humanity, be they demons, heretics, or Xenos.
And that's part of the charm of the setting.
That's the charm of the setting, but how can that be criticism?
Well, it's kind of hard. Like, one of the charms of the setting is, like, this is a grimdark nature where something as horrific as Space Marines, the Imperial Guard, the Adeptus Sorta Regis are a necessity to fight back the horrors of the warp and the evils that lurk the galaxy.
Like, take a look at something like Nazi Germany, and you look at something like the concentration camps. There was no justifiable reason morally why you would have concentration camps. But in the grimdark future of the 40,000 of the 40K, there is every reason to have Space Marines. We need them. Without Space Marines, we could not stand up to the threats of the galaxy.
Yep.
Okay, we need these kind. In a galaxy where there are monsters and demons ready to destroy you, you need superhumans. You need super soldiers to protect you. This isn't satirical. This isn't something like, look, isn't this funny that they're using these when they're really not necessarily... There's no satire here.
If you look at modern 40K art, you can't look at it and say, yes, this is clearly a critique of fascism.
Exactly. Anyway, let's keep going. Sorry about that. Back in the 1980s, Warhammer 40,000 could have been called counterculture. It's loopy, fascist universe, a warping of Thatcherite Britain in the Cold War.
It is.
Yep. Its artworks and characterization subversive in their feckless, jamming together devices from 2080 comics, Milton and Dune, but over time, the license holders have softened and consolidated the wackier elements in order to make Warhammer 40,000 more sellable. A gradual mainstreaming that has transformed the Space Marine in particular from a crazed and distorted thug into a stoical camaraderie and devout necessary evil pitched against a galaxy of apocalyptic terrors. Yes!
Correct. That's not a problem. That's a feature. We did good.
This whole bit right here explains perfectly why Warhammer 40,000 is no longer satirical. It has evolved. It has changed. It is now taking itself more seriously. Very well said. Very well said. Oh, man. I struggle to think how you could have a problem with this, but you have a problem with it. In 2023, the writer and designer Tim Caldwell... Who's Tim Caldwell? Does he have anything let me look him up. I actually want to look him up. Tim Caldwell. TimCaldwell.com. Let's take a look at this. This has got to be something. Satire without purpose will wander in dark places. Yes, that's what he's referencing, but who is Tim Caldwell? Why do I care what he has to say? Why does he mean anything to me? Why should I care what Tim Caldwell has to say, or are you just quoting him because he agrees with you?
I think he's pulling a wisecrack of, man agrees with me, therefore I quote.
Okay, anyway, well, let's hear what he has to say. In 2023, the writer and designer Tim Caldwell published a comprehensive account of how Warhammer 40,000's reverential militarism and apocalyptic fascist sentiments have slowly overgrown the more whimsical and pluralistic aspects of this sci-fi fantasy setting. He discusses how the Space Marine, Games Workshop's best-selling miniature, has matured from a jackbooted bully into the dowdy and dogmatic paladins we see in Space Marine 2, and down with a tactical aesthetic ready-made for modern third-person shooters, which cleaves away from the colorful exaggeration of the 1980s and much closer to the real-world military gear of Special Forces operators.
Yeah, we like this stuff, though.
Yes, we like the more gritty and realistic. Before we go any further, I need to pull up something here. I want to pull up the article here as well so that we have it on hand. Why play a fascist? Okay, here we go. I just want it up and ready so that in case something happens on our screen, we can read it more readily. Why'd it go away? There it is. Okay. It went away for a second, but I got it now. Okay. Because sometimes we get those technical issues. Okay. All right, here we go. As Caldwell notes, one outcome of making Space Marines more like real-world soldiers is that Warhammer 40,000 has become more appealing to the actual military institutions that have so often proven to be allies or spawning grounds for fascists.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so, no, let's read. He comments scathingly on the presence of United States Armed Forces recruiters at Warhammer 40,000 tournament. Okay, hold on.
The United States military went to a tournament and said, hey guys, want to sign up?
So first of all, your argument is that military institutions have taken interest in Warhammer 40,000, and these military institutions are the spawning ground and allies for fascists. And one of these military institutions is the United States Armed Forces.
Hey, remember what the United States Armed Forces did to fascists back in the 40s?
No, he doesn't remember because the dude doesn't actually know what real fascism is.
I mean,
this is actually insulting.
My question is, let's say you have a fascist government rise up. What do you expect to do with it?
Do you want to know?
How do you want to get rid of it?
Do you want to know why it's easy to recruit people in these kind of things? Because a lot of the people who get into Warhammer 40,000 get into it because they like the idea of self-sacrifice, giving of yourself, fighting against the dangers to protect your home, your family.
Being a part of something bigger.
Yeah, being part of something bigger. And they say, hey, be part of something bigger in real life, not just in a tabletop.
Yeah, and I mean, you're also, like, it's not like these guys showed up because they thought we could specifically recruit 40K guys. It's the same reason why they showed up in front of, like, theaters showing Top Gun back in the day.
Yeah.
Because they know there's going to be a bunch of young men that really think this something is cool, and so they say, like, hey, would you like to do something similar to that in real life?
Yes, it makes perfect sense. This is, oh my God, this is actually painful. All right. He is similarly unimpressed by the recent diversity washing of the setting's Ubermensch. In Space Marine 2, Chiron and Gadriel are of non-white ethnicity, much to the chagrin of certain reactionary Warhammer players.
I've seen, like, one guy upset.
I didn't even see that one guy.
It was the guy who, like, because he made, like, that comment on, like, that...
that stupid-ass article? Who takes that seriously?
Well, not that article.
I made a joking video responding to it. I don't think anyone took that seriously.
Yeah, but that list, though, where
that's what I'm talking about, the list.
But yeah, like, that's one guy allegedly had to type that thing in. I didn't see, like, I have no problem with Chiron and Galadriel.
Yeah, there was no issue. And by Games Workshop's efforts to market this most vicious of fables to younger teenagers and children, even as older enthusiasts show up to events in Nazi regalia, again, there was only one that we know of, and he was trolling, or cheekily portrayed noted Hitler sympathizer Donald Trump as a present-day God Emperor.
Gosh.
You got offended by the God Emperor Trump meme. You got offended by the God Emperor Trump meme. You poor child.
You know there's a God Emperor Lenin meme, too.
Like, literally, you could put anyone's face on the God Emperor's body and make it a meme. It is a joke, you absolute infant.
For Pete's sakes, alternate history, I'll put Jeb Bush's...
You absolute infant. Like, you are such a crybaby. You are aware you could do the same thing with anyone. And make your preferred politician up there on God Emperor's body. Like, oh my God. Okay.
I mean, like, it's like, and you also say Hitler sympathizer. You know dang well he isn't.
You know he's not a Hitler sympathizer. You're saying that to tout bullshit. Let's keep going. I'm not here to endorse or demean Trump. I just think it's funny that you have to do that. Isn't it ironic that these idiots, even in an article talking about Warhammer 40K, can't leave Trump out of it?
Exactly. It's like I said. We should have had our leftist bingo card here because they have to bring up everything. I guarantee you we're going to hear about global warming and stuff.
Yeah, I guarantee it. You know what? Global warming is going to come up. Feminism is going to come up.
I'm not going to actually do this with real alcohol because it would shoot my liver, but I am going to get a drink. So
bring me one too. Bring me. We're going to do the leftist drinking game. Anytime they say a buzzword, we're going to take a drink. Y'all try this at home too, but if you do it with alcohol with an article like this, you might die. So do this at your own risk.
Do not do this with alcohol.
All right, brother. On 3. 1, 2,
3. All right, let's do this.
All right, here we go. All right. Caldwell's appraisal of Warhammer 40,000's gradual grim darkening deserves to be read alongside Suzanne Sontag's essay, Fascinating Fascism, written in 1977, which explores how the culture industry can serve as a laundering apparatus for shitty ideas, reintroducing verboten people and things by means of an insinuative process of waiting for cycles of taste to distill out the controversy. Okay, let me explain what that was said, because that was a lot of big bullshit words. I'm going to put this up again. Pray for me as I take this long and arduous journey to read this left-wing meme. Let me explain what that means. Suzanne Sontag's essay, Fascinating Fascism, written in 1977, was meant to show us how media can give us fascism apologetics. Basically, we don't realize we're being given fascism ideals in our media. We need to be careful because media nowadays is secretly trying to feed us fascist ideas. That's essentially what this is saying. Anyway, continuing. In the course of what is technically a product review, see reviews are allowed to be political, Sontag touches on the various means by which Nazi art, especially, has become acceptable as museum piece, as pop motif, as kink. The knowing and sniggering detachment of sophisticates pissing about with tropes and obstinate escapist inclination to divorce art from its political context and enjoy it for itself, recently echoed in Saber Interactive CEO Matthew Karch's grumbling over games that impose morals on players, a delight in breaking taboos, and in the case of the Nazi filmmaker Leni Riefenstahl, a desire to reclaim a prominent female artist for feminism. Ah, there it is. Take a drink.
There we go.
All right, let me explain what this is saying, because I know that this was a lot of bullshit, and again, putting this on screen, pray for me as I take a long and arduous journey to this left-wing meme. Here's what they're saying. What they are essentially saying is that Sontag, this woman back in the 1970s, wrote a long essay about how when she was looking at media of the time period, she saw a lot of fascist ideas being presented and pro-fascist messages in their media. Because at the time period, there was a lot of Cold War issues, and people were so upset with socialism and Stalinism and, you know, communism in general, that people were starting to look back on the ideas of the fascist state, which was counter to communism, and said, you know what, maybe some ideas from that weren't so bad. Now, I'm not saying whether she was right or wrong in her criticisms, because I don't care. What this article writer's trying to do is take her concepts and say, see, look, Space Marines in Warhammer 40,000 may make you think it's all about this really good stuff. It may make you feel really good, but it's secretly trying to impose fascism onto you. That's what he's essentially saying. That's what this whole word salad is trying to push onto you.
I want to take him into a nice padded room and go, is the fascism in the room with us right now?
Is the fascism talking to? Is the fascism here?
Show us on the doll where the fascism talking.
All right, let's keep going. I think you see a similar blend of ironical enjoyment, fetishization, and questionable progressive politicking in how Warhammer 40,000 has evolved since the debut of the tabletop's wargame's first miniatures and rulebooks. One thing I read between the lines of Colwell's piece is the risk of intolerance bred by the increasing consistency and professionalization of Warhammer 40,000 as fiction. So in other words,
is it not fiction?
So what he's saying there is there is intolerance being created through Warhammer 40,000's fiction. In other words, it's teaching us to be intolerant. It's basically teaching us through the fiction to be bigoted.
Of what?
Exactly. The early Warhammer 40,000 rulebooks are a jumble of inspirations and references. Judge Dredd, Warhammer Fantasy Battle, Rogue Trooper, and much more besides. As Caldwell explores, the later editions have standardized the writing and aesthetics of Warhammer 40,000, even as the setting has swelled in the hands of spin-off novelists, artists, and animators. A tabletop universe based around improvisational painting and fan storytelling has become a canon that, in the case of Space Marine 2, obliged Saber to haggle with Games Workshop over everything from the spacing of rivets on power armor to how exactly Space Marine should walk, jog, and run.
Because heaven forbid Games Workshop say, hey, we want you to do this correctly.
Correct. They want to get it right. What's wrong with that? It can be pleasing to inhabit a fiction where all the pieces are smoothly bolted together, working in lockstep. But teaching people to favor the consistency of imaginary worlds may also teach them to vilify disagreement and the entire practice of interpretation. Okay, let me translate what that just said. We don't like canon. We don't like consistency. The Force can do it at once in the later Star Wars universes. Galadriel was always a Mary Sue. Canon can take a fat one. What this is essentially saying is, you know what, it's nice when a world can work in lockstep with its rules and canon works really well. It's nice when a fictional world follows its own lore. But the thing is, when you do that, it can teach people to be angry at anyone who doesn't like that. Because that's what he says in the second sentence. By teaching people to favor the consistency of imaginary worlds, the canon, it may also teach them to vilify disagreement and the entire practice of interpretation. So in other words, in the Star Wars sequel series, the Force cannot magically heal things. That is canon. However, the Star Wars sequel series says, no, we're going to add that now. Now I step up and say, I don't agree with that, that's bad. No, I'm the villain now. I'm the villain, I'm the bad guy because I demanded that things stay consistent.
This is why they don't like Henry Cavill.
Yeah, Henry Cavill was exactly this way, and this is why they hated him, because he said, no, guys, we need to stay consistent to the lore of what we're making.
This is what the books say.
Oh, my God. This is actually cancerous. All right, anyway, let's keep going. At its nastiest, this mentality both facilitates and camouflages bigotry! Bigotry! It said bigotry. This is going to kill us. All right, at its nastiest, the mentality both facilitates and camouflages bigotry. Take the backlash against the concept of female space marines. That space marine recruits are all cisgender men. Cisgender. That space marine recruits are all cisgender men is a commercial accident, albeit one that speaks to the boys' club undertow of the wargaming scene. According to Caldwell, Games Workshop simply couldn't sell enough boxes of mixed-gender Space Marines and rewrote the lore to justify only shipping male miniatures. Nowadays, this business technicality has become an article of faith among certain male players, which makes the introduction of a new Marine-adjacent faction of mixed-gender Custodes not just an attempt to attract women to the game, but a form of heresy. No, let's explain this so that you all understand, because this guy didn't. What happened was this. When Space Marines were first being introduced, Games Workshop tried to release male and female minis. The female minis were not bought very well. They were not very popular. So they came up with another idea. Let's make them all male, but let's like a totally new all-female fighting group for the Imperium of Man called the Sororitas, or the Sisters of Battle. Those sold much better, and so they said, okay, in the lore, Space Marines are all male, the Sororitas are all female. That was the rule. That's what they created. And now they made that canon. And now people are saying, well, we want female Space Marines. And everyone's saying, no, that's against the lore because that's the way the lore writers designed it.
And from Games Workshop's perspective, it's like, we tried, didn't work.
And your argument is, well, that's just bigoted. Well, it's not bigoted because it's what the lore says. We are allowed to agree with the lore. But here's what I'd want to say. Right now, so far, you're describing how awful the Space Marines are, how fascist, how evil, how disgusting. And yet, but at the same time, they need to be female. Why would you... What's the mentality? The Imperium of Man is evil and fascist, but more women, please.
Yeah, so it was like his big critique of like the Waffen SS wasn't that they were, evil sons of guns. It was rather that they just didn't include chicks in the club.
If only Hitler were a woman. If only Hitler were a woman. Non-binary, by the way. Oh boy. All right. Anyway, let's keep going. Oh, this is so shitty. All this notwithstanding, I'm not sure the mainstream of Warhammer 40,000 Satire entirely explains why the setting has become so attractive to fascists that the license holders have felt moved to remind us that Warhammer 40,000 is supposed to be satire.
It isn't anymore.
The more complicated problem with Warhammer 40,000 is that the depictions of fascism it supposedly lampoons, the uniforms, posters, films, and other artworks that drew millions in the 1930s and 40s, are more compelling today than many anti-fascists would care to admit.
Listen, when I look at cool stuff from 40K, my first thought isn't, yes, fascism. My first thought is, holy crap, that looks cool.
Exactly. It's dangerous, Sontag says, to reduce fascism to brutishness and terror. Well, you're right. We shouldn't reduce fascism to brutishness and terror. And yet, that's exactly what this article writer is doing. He's basically taking all the awful things about Space Marines and all the awful things they do and saying this is evidence of their fascism. You're not exploring the political aspects of fascism. You're only exploring the social aspects of fascism. You're basically saying because the Space Marines are brutish and terrorizing, that makes them fascist. So you're literally doing what Sontag says not to do, but whatever. Fascism survives because it offers things to aspire to. In Sontag's summary, quote, the ideal of life is art, the cult of beauty, the fetishism of courage, the dissolution of alienation, and ecstatic feelings of community.
So wait.
Hold on. What?
Beauty is bad.
So we can't love beauty. We can't enjoy life as an art. We can't give our life to a form of art. We cannot fetishize courage. I wouldn't even say fetishizing it. I'd say just appreciating courage.
So we're all supposed to be like appreciate ugly nonsense and be run away from everything. Gosh, you really are friends with Wisecrack, aren't you?
You are friends with Wisecrack. You want everything to be ugly. You want us to praise cowardly simps. You want us to dislike strong masculine figures.
I mean, here's my beef with it. It's like the Soviets, absolute big anti-fascists because, communists, but they were very much fans of beauty and they were very much fans of heroism because, if you look at Soviet art style and Soviet musicians, they were very much, you will train very well to meet a certain standard of beauty. But on the other hand, during World War II, they very much raised up those that did well on the front lines as heroes.
Well, let's see what else I have to say. These are relatively innocuous values and emotions that may also appear in, say, rock music and superhero stories, at wargaming tournaments and sports events, and in earnest game developer peons to absolute brotherhood and sacrifice. So, okay, to be clear, all of these things that make up fascism, you can find in rock music, superhero stories, and in games like Warhammer.
So why is it?
So I guess the fascism is in the room with us. It's always been in the room with us. Everything's fascist. Everything is fascist. Everything is evil. Everything is Hitler, and they've got to point it all out.
Fascism is Samus.
Fascism is the one around you.
Fascism is the man behind
you. Ugh.
If you get that, we appreciate you.
Speaking as an occasional enjoyer of Warhammer 40,000, you are not. I love complex XCOM alike Warhammer 40,000 Chaos God Gate Demon Hunters.
Whoa.
Hold on.
You enjoy XCOM?
You liked XCOM?
You xenophobe! How dare you not attack poor innocent Advent aliens trying to colonize our world?
XCOM is a game all about Earth fighting off an alien invasion. You're a xenophobe for playing that game. You are a xenophobe.
And might I add also that there are heroes in that game.
Mm-hmm.
We're showing some fascist tendencies there, young man.
Shame on you. All right, anyway. I do think the setting actively channels various proto-fascist longings. Proto-fascist. Keep in mind, that's next-level fascism.
Actually, it's pre-fascism. we're going fascism before fascism, so we saw your fascism, so we decided to pre-game our fascism.
Exactly. Sontag's characterization of the every time Sontag's name comes up, I'm clicking this. I'm just clicking that. Sontag's characterization of the hypnotic fascist dramaturgy on display in Nazi artworks and photography of Nazi rallies reads like a dissection of a Space Marine Codex cover. The cover?
Well, so did you actually read the Space Marine Codex?
So let me be clear.
Oh,
you looked at Sontag's characterization of Nazi artwork, compared it to a cover of a codex, and said, purely Nazism on display. This is surely Nazism. Wow. Okay. This classic spectacle of the Marines piled up like crabs in a bucket, balance between egomania and servitude. Wait. Hold on. Balance between egomania and servitude.
So,
aren't those
supreme love of self
and love of others? So if you are somewhere between selfish and selfless, you're a fascist.
So this man just literally flips through the dictionary, randomly selects a word, throws it in there, and doesn't even think if it makes sense.
What he just said was on the cover of the Codex, what you see is an example of egomania, a balance between egomania and servitude. So a balance between selfishness and selflessness. So
I'm looking at the cover right now. Literally, I'm holding the Space Marine Codex right now. It's a Space Marine in the middle of combat holding a bolt rifle.
Yeah. Okay, then it says domination of others and submission to an almighty leader.
He's just holding a bolt rifle.
He's just holding a bolt rifle in this image.
Pull
Let's pull it out. Let's pull up the Codex. What's it called? Warhammer
40,000 Space Marine Codex.
40. Didn't mean to do that. Space Marine Codex. Let's all take a look at the Space Marine Codex together. Let's take a look at this. Here it is. This is it. Let's take a look at this. This is the Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine Codex. That's what it looks like.
That's the cover.
So this is an example of... What was it? Hold on, let me check the thing again. Glad I pulled this up over here. So this is an example of... Hold on. There it is. Egomania and servitude. Yes, because that's what I see in it too, obviously.
Let me read the back cover. Maybe he's being pedantic. Space Marines are genetically augmented warriors created as humanity's ultimate shock troops, formerly known as the Adeptus Astartes. The Space Marines have helped to defend the Imperium of Man for 10,000 years. They go to war armed and armored with the best war gear the Imperium can provide, complementing their enhanced strength, speed, and resilience. They are steeled in mind, body, and soul to endure ceaseless war, facing the most monstrous threats throughout the galaxy and knowing no fear. These steadfast warrior knights each belong to a chapter. Each of these close-knit brotherhoods dispatch strike forces of Space Marines, supporting by transport vehicles, battle tanks, and combat walkers. Hurtling attack craft and powerful artillery and lightning assaults and blistering speed and power. All fear them as the angels of death, for the Space Marines are the Emperor's fury made manifest. Okay, maybe he's looking at the back cover.
But that still doesn't answer any of this, because he's saying egomania, a balance between egomania and servitude, domination of others and submission to an almighty leader, extravagant effort and the endurance of pain.
Yeah,
what's wrong with extravagant effort and the endurance of pain? Those are good things.
So
basically what this dude said is everything good in the world is secretly fascist. All the things we aspire to, all the things we want to hold ourselves up to, they're all fascist. We want to be strong and fearless, fascist. We want to be beautiful and graceful, fascist.
So you need to talk to Jay at some point and say, like, hey, man, you do beautiful work. When'd you know you were a fascist?
Just, my God, this is so incredible. Okay, illustrations of Space Marine battle scenes and pageants are routinely defined by what Sontag... We're having to read Sontag, let's go. Like, by what Sontag calls, quote, orgiastic transactions between mighty forces and their puppets, uniformly garbed and shown in ever-swelling numbers, alternating between ceaseless motion and a congealed static virile posing.
So they just look cool?
So, yes, that's essentially what that means. Basically, they look cool. That's essentially what it says.
The Soviets did that too.
If there is supposed to be an overtone of absurdist exaggeration, I'm not sure that appears in a lot of later-day Space Marine art. No, there's a lot of crazy exaggeration in later-day Space Marine art. There is, I think, zero sense of caricature at work in Space Marine 2's combat. You're right, there is no caricature.
Okay.
As Matthew Karch put it in his complaint about video game moralizing, we just want to do some glory kills and get the heart rate up a little.
Yes! Nothing wrong with that.
Yes, that is exactly what we want.
100% agree.
Matthew Karch hitting it on the head right there. We just want glory kills and excitement.
Is he related to Jonathan Karch?
Maybe. Anyway. Almost a century since European fascism arose, we may intellectually understand such art for a display of hatred and yet still feel drawn to it.
I think you're reading way too deep. In fact, you've not missed the forest for the trees. I'm afraid you've taken shrooms and now are imagining a dragon. Which sounds cool until you realize you're killing yourself.
So, what they're basically saying is, almost a century since European fascism arose, we may intellectually understand such art for a display of hatred. Here's the thing. The art on the Codex Astartes, we'll pull it up again.
Yeah, pull it up.
We'll pull it up again. Tell me honestly, and I want you to answer this in chat. Is this a display of hatred? Does this image that you're looking at, do you think, this is all about hate?
No, this is like one of those memes where they say, like, men will look at this thing and say, hell yeah. And yes, we will look at that and go, hell yeah.
Is this a display? No, I'm genuinely serious. Is this a display of hate?
It's only a display of hate when I flip it over and I look at the price tag.
That's the display of hate. But how can this be a display of hate? It is literally a Space Marine and his brothers fighting against the enemies of man. And you're right, I do hate the enemies of man. They're out to kill me.
Because let's compare and contrast, shall we?
Okay, anyway... and yet still feel drawn to it. Again, we don't hate. It's not about hate. Perhaps because we live in grimdark times indeed.
I mean, I'm not happy with things right now, but grimdark's a bit stretched for the modern setting.
I think the brutishness and terror of Warhammer 40,000... but remember, there it is. Sontag said not to treat fascism as just brutishness and terror, but here you are going back to it. Because again, that's all you see in fascism, the brutishness and terror. Ooh, you don't like it. I think the brutishness and terror of Warhammer 40,000, the obviousness of its depths to the theatrics of tyrants like Hitler and Mussolini, may actually be what lends its positive appeal, in that embracing a monstrous taboo produces a sense of freedom from the hypocrisy that all is well. So in other words, we embrace fascism because at least by embracing fascism, we avoid the hypocrisy of saying everything's okay.
Or a bunch of guys got together and said, hey, want to play a fun game? Yeah, that sounds great. Let's do that.
That fascinates me. That's like saying, you know what, I can tell that nothing's right in the world, so rather than live a lie, I'm going to be a villain. That's like saying, you know what, nothing's okay in the world, but politically we're in a garbage can, economically we're shit, I'm going to go shoot up a school.
Well, the thing is, he can't comprehend the idea of getting in someone else's head and thinking it from a different perspective. Because from him, he looks at this and go, only fascists could possibly like this, because anyone that disagrees with me is a fascist. But in reality, the vast majority of people that play this, like 99% that play Space Marine 2, that get into the tabletop, don't really care that much about politics. They just want to have fun.
The only thing you're right about in this is that we want to escape the real world to this world. We want to escape the real world to have fun in a hobby.
Yeah.
We're not doing it to be fascist. We're doing it because this is a fun hobby.
Because, I kid you not, it's fun to yell for the Emperor in charge. My buddy Forrest, his birthday was like a few weeks ago. We went out to play paintball. And a lot of us there were screaming stuff from Warhammer 40k. Blood for the Blood God. Skulls for the Skull Throne. There is even a guy running around with some Imperium tattoos. There was another guy running around with Nurgle tats.
Let's be real.
It's just having fun.
Anyway, the Imperium is one of many cathartic dark fantasy statements about the hideousness of contemporary reality. It channels a conviction that our world has neoliberal and imperial capitalist dog dinner.
Capitalist,
Yep. Is not in fact the height of progress, but fundamentally awful and only getting worse. You are clearly wrong. You're saying that the Imperium is a cathartic dark fantasy that states the hideousness of our contemporary reality, that in our world, the neoliberal and imperial capitalist dog dinner, which is our current politics, is not in fact the height of progress, but fundamentally awful and only getting worse. You're wrong, okay? You're wrong. That is not what the Imperium is meant to do. That was never what it was meant to do. Even when it was a satire, that wasn't what it was meant to do. You are fundamentally wrong about that. And you know what? I don't even have to explain it, because explaining anything to you is pointless. It goes in one ear and out the other. So I will just tell you you're wrong. Screw you. Let's keep going. This was possibly true of Warhammer 40,000 as it was conceived in 1980s Britain.
Well, it's not 1980s Britain.
Well, it's not 1980s Britain anymore. It's certainly true today. No, it's not. Amid pandemics, mass layoffs, tangible climate change.
There we go.
Colonial genocide.
Colonialism.
Witch hunt, sprawling enmity, and inequality.
Let's take a drink. Gosh, every single buzzword he's going through. This man isn't paid by the word. He's paid by the buzzword.
And clear evidence that the planet's wealthiest are a pack of would-be post-human autocrats who are even now feeding their plunder into various accelerationist self-preservation initiatives predicated on the extinction of everybody else. That was all one sentence!
So, whoa. This man literally saw the big twist in the Fallout show and literally said, yes, that is unironically how it is.
This was all one sentence. Everything I just highlighted was one sentence. Oh, wait, no. I'm sorry. That was there, fixed it. All of this was one sentence. Holy crap.
Whatever editor you have at this site, fire them.
All of that was just you stringing buzzwords around to talk about how much you hate the modern day society.
Hey, can you have the guy from Saber Interactive go over this in short words?
Again, I hate to do it, but literally. All right, keep going. At the heart of the developed West, the civic and political institutions that arose from the old post-war liberal social consensus Malder is gathering undead like the emperor dreaming on his golden throne, objects of worship that have been hollowed out by capital.
Yeah.
Oh, dude. I'm going to say this in the kindest way possible. You need to get laid. This writer...
No. He doesn't even do this. Go outside, touch grass.
The sun exists. There is a world outside.
I hope you never do play a game of 40K, because I guarantee you your opponent is going to say this phrase over and over again. Just roll the fucking dice.
You're like the kind of person who can't roleplay with anyone because you have to see yourself in it.
You're the person that gets around the D&D table, and when the king says, I have a job for you, you go, we should really be questioning why we're living in an authoritarian absolute monarchy. We should be trying to establish a democracy.
You're the kind of guy who would see the princess being held captive by a dragon and not do anything about it because the princess has to have the autonomy to save herself. Like, Jesus Christ, these kind of people, this kind of person, I say he should get laid, but you know he never will, because he'd see that as abusing a woman. Just, jeez.
I'm not sure I want this guy getting with anybody.
No,
man or
we can't let this seed.
I don't think it's...
This gene seed is corrupted. We cannot allow it to be spread.
Oh, okay.
All right, let's move on. At its most potent, the Imperium Man can be a fiction that renders all this disgustingly concrete and provides some relief, opening an interval for laughter and discussion. No. See, what he's essentially saying in that sentence is that when the Imperium of Man is written well, when it's written at its best, it is all meant to be a satire that we can point and laugh at and have a good time with and discuss why everything we see in it is bad in the real world.
You're like one of the same people that wrote the Vampire the Masquerade code book, aren't you?
Yeah. This, for me, is the point of its satire. Well, congratulations. As you said before, it's no longer satirical. So take your bullshit and walk away.
Go away.
But satire doesn't really work when you commodify it successfully. The all-important historical context is lost as the business evolves over decades and moves between markets, and the need to sell a product encourages a more straightforward, positive identification with the radiant fascist trope Sontag describes. No, okay, let me explain what this guy's upset about. I finally figured it out. I've cracked the code. This paragraph revealed it. He is aware that Warhammer 40,000 is no longer satirical. But he wants it to be satirical. He can't stand that it's no longer satirical. He wants it to return to its satirical roots, because if it is not satire, then it is pro-fascist. See, Warhammer 40,000 to him can only work if it's satirical, because to him, everything about it, the heroism, the selflessness, the worshipping of our heroes, the offering of ourselves to a higher being, all of it, it's fascist. See, the thing is, during World War II and during the Cold War, there was a lot of propaganda about us versus them. You see that in war. It's us versus them. That's the propaganda. And of course, you see this in Warhammer 40,000. But the difference is that in World War II and the Cold War, a lot of this propaganda was done meaninglessly. It was meant to keep people invigorated and helping push the war effort. In Warhammer 40K, it's pretty much the truth as they know it. When you read a communist poster that says, "Stand for red or else we'll be dead," when you read that, it's just a stupid slogan to help remind people of who the enemy is. In Warhammer 40,000, it is legitimately, when they say, support your Imperial Guard officer today, or turn in any suspicious people to the commissariat, yes, because fuck, we have real dangers going on.
I mean, it does ring a little bit differently, but it's just like, hey, we need to destroy the aliens because the aliens are trying to eat us!
Anyway, within Warhammer 40,000's galactic expression of despair, the figure of the Space Marine offers a particular sense of identity and purpose for suffering, vindictive men.
Sorry, ladies, you're not allowed to play Space Marine.
Grieving for her own brother's turn towards misogyny, Bell Hooks writes...
Can we meet the brothers? Because they sound fun.
Grieving for her own brother's turn towards misogyny, Bell Hooks... I love that he couldn't even capitalize the name Bell Hooks.
Oh, maybe you're a little misogynist for sure.
Here's a misogynist. He's not even capitalizing a woman's name. You're not giving her capitalization. What? No, it has capitalism in it. We can't capitalize your name. That would be capitalistic.
Please tell me this conversation with us that are, you forgot to capitalize. Capital?
Did you just say capital? Oh my God. Anyway. Grieving for her own brother's turn towards misogyny, Bell Hooks writes...
Wait, hold on, misogyny.
Misogyny, yeah, you're right. Drink. Grieving for her own brother's turn towards misogyny, Bell Hooks writes that the first act of violence that... Patriarchy!
Ah, gosh dang it.
Grieving for her own brother's turn towards misogyny, Bell Hooks writes that the first act of violence that patriarchy demands of men isn't abuse of women, but self-mutilation. Adding that, quote, "If an individual is not successful in emotionally crippling himself, he can count on patriarchal men to enact rituals of power that will assault his self-esteem."
What?
So, to explain, basically what he's saying is, the patriarchy, before it starts abusing women, first abuses men by making them have low self-esteem and breaking them so that they'll want to be more masculine and thus join the patriarchy.
So let me get this straight. It's abusing everybody. So it's actually quite rather...
Wow, that's pretty... Yeah, I'd say that's not sexist at all. It abuses men and women. There we go. Hail the patriarchy, boys. That's what it does. Everyone gets abused.
Wins again.
There is no sexism in a patriarchy. I'll drink to that, boys.
Yeah, cheers, bro.
I'll drink to that. Let's go. Anyway, this is what patriarchs mean by making a man of you. Make a man... Well, that means we have to go fight the Huns.
Hold on. I was switching to say, did you watch Mulan, and when we got to the "I'll make a man out of you" montage, you just started screaming, "Fascist! Fascist!"
They're trying to make Mulan into a man fat! Well, actually, no. That'd be very transpositive, wouldn't it?
No. Mulan gets the pass. Mulan gets... You're right. Mulan gets the pass because he's like, fascist. Oh wait, no. One's a woman. It's fine.
It's okay. She's not fascist now. She's a woman who identifies as a man for the purposes of her own preservation. Truly patriarchy. Indeed. Anyway, where were we? Oh yeah, this is what patriarchs mean by making a man of you, and Warhammer 40,000 monsters that process in the rituals of Space Marine recruitment. abducted from the most traumatized levels of society, brutalized and brainwashed, carved open and filled with gene seeds derived from alpha male primarchs that rework the flesh, producing ogreish scale and potency.
Wait.
But again, we want women.
Lorgar's an alpha male now?
I know. But Fulgrim's an alpha male too, apparently.
No. I draw the line.
Nah, we ain't approving that. But again, I love this. Can we read that again? They describe how Space Marines are made. Says, abducted from the most traumatized levels of society.
Not necessarily.
Brutalized and brainwashed.
Not always.
Carved open and filled with gene seeds derived from alpha male primarchs that rework the flesh, producing ogreish scale and potency. But again, we want female Space Marines.
Yep.
Again, what is your deal, you absolute Neander bitch?
Mean, like you make it, you write it like in the worst way possible, and like some Space Marine chapters are worse about this than others. Like, if you read the book Dante, it goes into like what the Blood Angels go into producing a Space Marine, like the trials and tribulations. And typically, it's not them going, "You little boy, you're going to be a Space Marine now." Oh no! It's typically, "All right, who wants to join? All right, we can only take some of you."
There are many recruits. There are lots of boys who would love to become Space Marines.
It's like considered a great honor.
It is considered an honor for me. Now, for some, yes, it is abduction. For some, it is. But for others, no. It is an honor to become a Space Marine. But here's the part that I find so funny. Doesn't this go against fascism? The fascist wants to idolize the soldier. They want to idolize who the soldier is because they believe that the true soldier, the true warrior of the fascist movement is beautiful. But what you just described is an ogreish monstrosity.
Clearly, he's never seen the Blood Angels.
Well, my point being, if he's right and all Space Marines are just ogre monsters, why on earth would a fascist government want to uphold those as the pinnacle of mankind?
Also, I'd like to point out, though, you're going to look at Titus, Galadriel, and Chiron and tell me they're ogreish and they're not Giga Chads?
I want to meet a female ogre and slap her.
No, she slaps you.
And it kills me. Anyway, keep going. Yeah, we're not done. I'd say we're a little over halfway. Space Marine... yeah, I just realized that. Space Marines are thereby rendered chemically sterile and as such warded against the seductive, annihilating enigma that is the patriarchal conception of women.
What? What? The patriarchal conception of... Have you ever been so sexist and believed women were a fucking concept? Women aren't real! Newsflash! They are merely a concept.
That moment when you're so sexist that women aren't real, they're a figment of our imagination.
Well, no wonder we don't have female Space Marines. Women don't exist.
That's great. Okay, so joking aside, what that actually means is Space Marines are sterile, which means that they can't have sex and give birth or help give birth, which is apparently also fascist because it makes them immune to the patriarchal conception of women. Except that's not at all fascist in any way.
If you look at what the Nazi propaganda wanted to do, they wanted their soldiers to breed literally as much as possible. Because they told German women, it is your duty to breed, to bring in the next generation. So if a fascist organization was making super soldiers, they likely would not sterilize them. They would want them to breed to produce more super soldiers.
If Warhammer 40,000, if Space Marines were fascist, if they were meant to be fascist, you would want female Space Marines because you'd want them to fuck so that you could make even more much quicker. The idea that Space Marines are sterile and incapable of reproducing is actually counter to fascism.
It's actually a failsafe, rather.
And again, I don't understand the left anymore. I thought that it was bad that men were attracted to women. Wasn't that a bad thing? Wasn't it bad that they look at men and they think, men only see women as sex objects. You only want us for one thing. But now, it's bad that the Space Marines can't have sex. Oh, how dare you not want to have sex with every woman you see? How dare you only have how dare you not have a patriarchal concept of women that you want to fuck every woman you look at? I'm actually kind of impressed by how weird this has all gotten.
I, for one, recommend a healthy middle ground where you have a guy and a girl that just get married, but, that's just me.
Ugh.
I'm called old-fashioned at times.
With a handful of exceptions in the spin-off books, any interest in romance or sex has been replaced by zealotry. Space Marines are the ultimate incels. Okay,
it's voluntary!
First drink for incel, saying incel.
Son of a biscuit.
Secondly, it is voluntary. Incel means it's involuntary. Space Marines are voluntary. But by that logic, then Adeptus Sororitas are neats.
Gosh.
Oh my god. They perform what Sontag... We're reading Sontag again. Alright, back to Sontag. They perform what Sontag calls fascism's ideal eroticism. Sexuality converted into the magnetism of leaders and the joy of followers. So, in other words, Sontag says that fascism wants sexuality to be love for leaders and joy of following. No, fascism wanted sexuality to be man and woman make baby.
So baby can continue to work for the state.
Exactly. You know what I'm willing to bet? I'm willing to bet this person just ran through Sontag's essay, just picked out random lines, and then just decided to use them. Because I'm willing to bet Sontag didn't actually say this in the way they think they said it.
I'm willing to bet Sontag is also equally as insufferable.
Probably. Which doesn't simply erase the problem of sex, but reframes the savage repression of the sexual urge as a manly virtue. Okay,
he doesn't have the urges. It's not necessarily that, like, he's funneling them somewhere else. It's just that he doesn't have them anymore.
Well, no, what I'm saying... Here's what I find so funny. They're saying, which doesn't simply erase the problem of sex, but reframes the savage repression of the sexual urge as a manly virtue. So according to them, it is a problem there's a problem with sex. Men shouldn't want to have sex all the time. It's bad that men look at women as sex objects, yes, but it's also a problem that a man values the idea of withholding sexual urges. So the fact that me, 31 years old, have repressed my urges for sex. I have not had sex with a woman. I've wanted to. There have been many moments where I wanted to have sex with a woman, but I have refrained. I've held in my urges. But that's a bad thing. That's fascist. That's the savage repression of sexual urges is a manly virtue. That's fascist.
Or someone would argue it's piety.
My God, I'm actually you can't win. I want to have sex with every woman imaginable. That's sexist. I want to withhold myself from having sex with as many women as possible. That's fascist. What do I do? What do I do?
There is no winning.
What do I do?
Well, listen, even the Soviet Union wasn't this deluded.
What does a woman do? Does she want a man to have sex with her, or does she not? How does a woman live in this fascist society?
I am led to believe by modern media that women are only supposed to be lesbians, but that's just what I've been picking up.
The appeal of the Space Marine fantasy is that it takes the alienation, misogyny.
Gosh dang it.
And takes the alienation, misogyny, and misery of being man-made and flips it into a rigid gas mask of pride and belonging, of indestructible and unquestionable purpose.
God forbid we have to...
Yeah, God forbid that we actually want to be something better than ourselves. In return for all the mutilations it deals and expects... Oh, get me one too. I'm almost out. We've almost killed our cans here. Holy crap. In return for all the mutilations it deals and expects, it promises calm and some degree of togetherness. And this is why it doesn't really operate in the bulk of Warhammer 40,000. Wait, hold on. And this is why it doesn't really operate. Because it promises calm and some degree of togetherness. They're brothers. They're a brotherhood. The Space Marines are brothers in arms. And they do operate as brothers. In the bulk of Warhammer 40,000 art I've encountered as a parody or satire. Well, yeah, but as you said, it's no longer satirical. So, F off. It's too heartfelt.
What? That's a problem?
Okay, so, oh no, I get why it's a problem. Because if it's a satire of fascism, there should be no empathy or heartfelt identity. We shouldn't feel anything for the characters. Because they're all figures just meant to criticize fascism.
Then it's not grim dark, it's grim derp. Oh my goodness.
Why is it wrong to empathize with characters? I feel awful for Dante. His situation is effed. I feel sorry for the lion. His situation is effed. I feel sorry for Celestine. I know she's a woman, but...
I feel sorry for Gilliman.
I feel bad for the Emperor. The dude's stuck on the throne.
I feel bad for anyone around Cato Sicarius.
That's true, too. But anyway. Where were we? Oh, God. It's too... I know that it's...
back to hell.
Well, back to hell. It's too heartfelt. In service to the master of mankind, we transmute anguish into serenity.
What?
Far be it that we actually take our pain and try to find peace in it. Far be it that... Okay, so what do you want? What do you want them to do? Do you want them to just bask in their own pain and misery? Do you want them to just walk around in pain and misery and anger all the time? Go join the world eaters. We find purpose in the mutual example of our battle brothers and in the reassuringly permanent suspicion of subversion. No, we don't find purpose in the permanent suspicion of subversion. We find purpose in our brotherhood. We Space Marines, because that's what you're talking from, we find purpose in our brothers and in fighting against a common threat against humanity. We are suspicious of danger. We are suspicious of threats because the threats are real. We are proofed and plated against the wiles of the exotic and the effete. We find peace in the fact of being already dead, already sacrificed, and candlelighted by the glowing image of the elder patriarch. Okay. The way you're describing it, we find peace in the fact of being already dead, already sacrificed, and cannibalized by the glowing image of the elder patriarch. Okay, let me rephrase it, because I think you're too stupid to understand what we like about Space Marines. Space Marines, I'm speaking as a Space Marine. We find peace in the fact that we will give our lives for humanity. Because in the grim, dark future of the 41st millennium, there is only war. Humanity's existence stands on the brink of a knife's edge. The slightest topple will destroy our entire world view. Not just our worldview, the way that we live is irrelevant. Our lives will be gone. Everything we know and love cast into the abyss, literally. And the only thing standing between that eventuality is us. So we will give our lives, we'll give our strength, and we'll give our time to the endurance and protection of mankind. We do. Now, the God Emperor is doing the same thing. The Primarchs do the same thing. We Space Marines are just the smaller, more widespread version of that. We have our own ways of doing it. We have many ways and customs and traditions that we follow that allow us to be effective at what we do. But we do it for the sake of humanity, not just for the Emperor, but for the sake of humanity. Sometimes we have to do dark, twisted things. Sometimes we have to question our morality in order to do what is necessary, but that is the complexity and beauty of the Warhammer 40,000 setting, which is why it evolved from satire to more serious, because people read that and said, this is something bigger than just satire. This is something that can be inspiring, something that can be horrifying, something that can be thought-provoking, something that can be humorous. It can evolve beyond the satire. It became far more than that. People do not read this setting. People do not follow the actions of Space Marines because they like the fascist ideals. They like the heroes of it. I'm going to say, Lark, you said it great the other day. I'm going to say it again here. When you're in a party, if there's one person in the corner wearing a Nazi uniform and screaming Heil Hitler, praise the Nazi party, hail the Third Reich, everyone is going to look at that guy and say, he's a loser, ignore him. But the writer of this article is the one who's pointing at everyone else in the party saying, you're all just as bad as him. You're all equally bad. Just because you don't wear the uniforms, just because you don't say the same things, you still are here at the party with him. Therefore, you're just as bad. And you know what we're all going to say? Okay. Because there comes a point where there's no point arguing with you anymore. There comes a point where there's no point providing reason because you cannot reason with a fool. A fool is incapable of reason. A fool is the kind of person who hears reason and laughs at it. Because I'm sure if this retard heard this whole thing, he would laugh and say, you're so triggered. You're so angry. I'm triggered. You looked at a video game. You looked at a video game that people enjoy and got inspired by, and you got butthurt that it wasn't satirical. You got butthurt that it wasn't saying the things you wanted it to say, and you got butthurt that people actually like it. And here you are whinging, going on a much too long article about how much better Space Marines were when they were satire, when they weren't taken seriously. Well, you know what? I got this to say to you. Go outside, touch grass, look at the sun, know that there is a world beyond your little echo chamber. I would tell you this, and I would hope you'd take me up on that, but you won't. You won't, and I know you won't. Want to know how I know you won't? Because people like you don't have lives. You don't know how to enjoy things. You don't know how to love things. The only thing you know is how to spout your political ideologue into everything, because you don't enjoy media. Media isn't about enjoyment to you people.
It's about the message.
It's about the message. It's about the ideology. And if you don't see your ideologues, if you don't see your belief systems reflected back at you, you can't stand it. That is what makes you pitiful. That is what makes you sad to me. It is crazy to me how ridiculous this article is.
Oh, it gets worse.
And it gets worse. All right. I'm not immune to this hellish daydream. You are. It's a carnival mirror show for all the tacky little aggressions and humiliations of my own upbringing.
Oof.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. We're about to dive into the worldview of this guy. Let's hear about our author. I understand my own masculinity as a wound that is slowly healing.
Masculinity's a wound?
There it is. He hates his own masculinity, guys.
He hates himself.
Well, drink to that, boys.
Yep, I'll drink to that.
Like I said. And which is reopened periodically by the experience of art that cultivates the old patriarchal frenzy.
Patriarchy.
Yeah, drink that. Yeah, I don't want to drink to that.
I got it.
I find Warhammer 40,000's Imperium freeing as a magnification of the grinding stupidity of patriarchy. But I also feel the pull of these warty stereotypes. I look at the thunderous draft trailer for Relic's Warhammer 40,000, Dawn of War 3, and silly as it sounds, I tear up a little, because I see in the smiling face of the doomed Marine the sheer absence of fear my old male conditioning has always demanded and never permitted.
You seem like a much
Why
cooler
didn't
dude.
it permit it?
It's an ideal that wants to... What?
But I also look at it with anger because, of course, it is an idea that wants to kill me.
It doesn't want you dead.
So essentially, what this is saying is, I look at this scene in the Dawn of War announcement trailer. There's a scene. We'll skip towards it.
Just skip
We'll
towards
skip to the end.
I actually really like this trailer, though the game isn't that great.
We'll skip to the end here.
First of all, everything here is cool. Amazing. Roll to the side!
In the face of death.
Okay, so that bit right there. We'll freeze on this.
First of all, he's a Chad.
So, this moment, you both love it. You feel teared up at it because you recognize the masculinity of it, the stoicism, the strength of it. But you also hate it because it wants to kill you. So literally, you felt a brief moment of masculine pride, and you hate it. You know what? You called Space Marines incels. I think I know who the real incel is.
I mean, you hate your own gender.
You hate your gender. You hate your masculinity. You hate the feeling of masculine pride. You hate self-sacrifice. You hate fearlessness. Who are you to tell men what we should or shouldn't enjoy?
Because obviously, if this was a woman, it'd be okay.
Yeah, again, if it was a woman. In the words of Ursula Le Guin, I don't care who that is. It is the story that hid my humanity from me. The story the mammoth hunters told about bashing, thrusting, raping, killing, about the hero.
Okay, if you are talking to mammoth hunters, they aren't real. You are on shrooms. You need to go see a professional. Just thought that should be said.
She was writing about how women and the tales they weave are omitted from the entire conception of narrative in Western fantasy literature. What are you talking about in this article? Are you talking about your own hatred of your masculinity? Are you talking about women being repressed? Are you talking about... What are you talking about? This whole article is just you jumping to different talking
points. So let me
points.
get this straight. You looked at this guy calmly accepting his own death and on a battlefield, and you said it gets you upset because this ideology wants you to die, and then your next response is, There aren't enough women here.
What even is it? I don't understand. What is the argument? What are you hating?
Go play with Barbie dolls, dude.
Literally.
Go play with dolls. Clearly that's more your speed.
She was right. Okay, but this also describes how fables of masculinity, even farcical ones, hide from men their capacity for tenderness, for kindness. This is a story about war! This is a story about galaxy-spanning war!
Pause. We can't have tenderness or kindness because you don't like self-sacrifice. You don't like anyone trying to go ahead and trying to take care of other people, seeing themselves as lesser than the whole collective and trying to help those people out at the detriment of themselves.
Here's a question. Here's a genuine question. You want women in the Space Marines. You want that. But why can't women be the tender, kind ones? Legitimately, you want to know something funny? I've read Space Marine books and I've read Sisters of Battle books. I find it very different how Space Marines view battle versus Sisters view battle. The Space Marines are often in the thickest, most destructive battles. Meanwhile, the Sororitas are dealing with moral consequences of their actions. Who lives and who dies, who they have time to save and who they don't. The Sisters of Battle display a lot more kindness and tenderness than the Space Marines do because of the kind of battles they go into. But if you put women in Space Marine battles too, won't they just be the same ones who don't get to show that tenderness or kindness? I admire the Sisters of Battle for the fact that they can be tender and kind. The Space Marines don't get that luxury because the battles they fight are apocalyptic.
And also, some of the Space Marines do show tender kindness. The Crimson Fist, the Lamenters.
The Salamanders.
Actually, I want to talk about the Lamenters for a second. Their big rallying cry is, for those we cherish, we die in glory.
Yes.
And I believe it's biblical. It's like, there is no greater love than this. Sacrificing yourself for a friend. Even All Might brings it up. There is nothing more heroic than self-sacrifice. The idea of saying, all right, I'm going to put myself on the line for those people I care about. Is that not something to be commended?
Oh, man. Okay.
Is that not a form of kindness?
One would think. Okay. Like all caricatures, again, this isn't a caricature. Like all characters, the Space Marines ought to shed light on all this, unpacking masculinity's old war machines, wrenching and exaggerating it in order to reveal. No. Because this is no longer satire.
Because remember what the game developer said, we want some glory kills and to get the blood and to get our blood pumped.
But Space Marines today are not built for this purpose. Correct. They are designed to be heroes. Yes!
Nothing wrong with this.
Their brainwashed fanaticism minimized even as their faces are cleansed of unsightly cyborg extrusions. The ugly metal fittings made elegant, comparable to the tactical headsets worn by their equivalents in Call of Duty. So essentially what you're saying is...
You don't like cool things.
What they're saying is he wants the Space Marines to be caricatures where we explore the fact that they need to be more kind and tender. But they're not. Instead, they're portrayed as heroes, and that's bad. You hate heroes. Okay, sure.
Go away.
How could Warhammer 40,000 and video game adaptations like Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2 rediscover the setting's non-notional anti-fascism?
That's not what it's about.
That's not what it's about.
It's about fun, you idiots. It's about seeing heroes fight monsters. It's about fun. Do you read St. George and the Dragon and try and psychoanalyze it? It's about a guy killing a monster.
I'm not sure it's possible. There is too much world building to dismantle. I don't think there's much to be gained from cleaning up the image of the Space Marine, whether by having them say company dismissed instead of brothers attend your duties, or by recharacterizing Space Marines according to the otherwise worthwhile diversity ideals.
Diversity.
God damn it. I'm getting so sick of this. You can't improve a monster like this.
And yet you want women.
So Space Marines are monsters, and like you said, but they want women. Screw you. I think you have to double down on the hideousness instead.
Clearly.
You have to lean into the unlikability of the Space Marine. Above all, perhaps you have to remind yourself that the Space Marine is a clown.
No,
you're the clown! Complete with the effing makeup and big red nose, you absolute simpleton. The Space Marine is not a clown, he's a hero. And the fact you think heroes are clowns shows me what a piece of shit you are. In the first editions of Warhammer 40,000, the Marines appear more ridiculous than formidable. They are what? Why are you describing old Warhammer? It's like you're just saying, look at how good it was back then. It was so good. And I'm like, I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. That's what it was. This is what it is. We enjoy what it is. Why do you hate what it is? If you hate what it is, don't talk about it.
I don't know. Let's scroll down. Let's look at the first cover. Let's look at with the Crimson Fist.
Oh, it's the Crimson Fist.
I don't know. I mean, sure, it is more characteristic, but I still think it looks kind of cool.
Looks badass.
Yeah.
Looks awesome.
It's very much of the 1980s style.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the Warhammer Fantasy art coming around the same time, it's very comparable.
Looks sick. Moving on. Man. They are squalid gargoyles of flesh and circuitry. They are strung out, flashy gangbangers in leather belts and onion armor. Oh, and I'll bet you felt your jollies just go up watching them. They are incompetent coppers, sneering Schutzstaffel. They are silly and dysfunctional, leering between the number tables of the first edition like fairy tale ogres playing at nights. Where today's Space Marines appear evenly proportioned and graceful for all their bulk, much of the early art occupies a hinterland between linear depth of perspective and the flattened crowds of medieval altarpiece. The Space Marines of this era look false and ungainly, at once bulbous and glistening and smearing across the canvas. They are laughable, they are enjoyably grotesque. They are grotesque. Loser. That's what you are. You're a loser. You can't describe anything accurately. First, the first edition of Warhammer Space Marines appear more ridiculous than formidable. They are squalid gargoyles of flesh and circuitry. They are strung out fashy gangbangers in leather belts and onion armor. They are incompetent coppers, sneering scuffle. They are silly and dysfunctional, leering between the number tables of the first edition like fairy tale ogres playing at nights. This is all negative. But where today's Space Marines appear evenly proportioned. So this is positive, evenly proportioned and graceful for all their bulk. Much of the early art occupies a hinterland between linear depth of perspective and the flattened crowds of medieval altarpiece. The Space Marines of this era look false and ungainly. At once bulbous and glistening and smeared across the canvas, they are laughable, they are enjoyable grotesques. I'm sorry, what? I thought you were saying how good they look. I thought the issue was the original Space Marines looked bad and that was the point, but now they look too good, but now you're saying, they're laughable, they're enjoyable, grotesque. F off! You'll say whatever you can to try to sound right, and you sound stupid. I'm getting tilted. This reflects the more word salad. This reflects the ostentatiously scrapped together feel of early Warhammer 40,000 at large. It's a work of crafty and capacious thoughtlessness, marching beneath a sci-fantasy banner that grants license to pilfer from everywhere and every wind. High and low culture undergo cybernetic recombination. The founding tale of the Space Marine rebellion against the Emperor, led by the chaos-polluted Horus, is a reworking of Satan's treachery and Paradise Lost. But there's also a character called Obi-Wan Sherlock Clouseau in a planet named in mockery of Birmingham. The whole thing is reminiscent of Shakespeare, not in the gilding of the poesy of the sentiments, but in the way it plays to the pit as much as the gallery.
Listen, we get it. In the original, they were taking the piss. Now, they're being more serious with it. I like it being more serious.
Yeah, and that's the issue. You like the original setting. We like what it is now. Deal with it. The setting has obvious topicality, but the fiction is too incoherent to be sustaining political commentary.
Yeah, I agree. That's why we don't want the political
commentary. We don't want politics. It reaches tentacles in all directions. Yes, that's why so many people like it. It is a libidinal kit bashing of everything the authors find. I think this guy just picked up a dictionary and said, new word, put that in.
Literally, I accused him of that earlier.
Of everything the authors find intriguing or intriguingly revolting about their time, and at the core of all that ravenous world-building, there is the Space Marine. One of my favorite artworks from this primordial period is David Gallagher's Lost Patrol, printed on the cover of White Dwarf magazine in 1992. It depicts a crowd of Space Marines and other Imperial goons descending a stair in some phantom dimension with a suggestion of city architecture in the top corner. A couple of the Marines resemble the ones you see in Space Marine 2, with uniform armor and heraldry and a particular squareness of jaw, a glintness of eye that has become canonical, but most of them look like press gang junkies in a face paint and pretentious mohawks, leering at the shadows. Their costumes and equipment are unconvincing, snatched from backstage wardrobe in passing. There are chainswords and lawmaker-style modular pistols, but there are also gaudy pendants and ribbon Tudor sleeves. The guy in bottom right looks like he's bumbled in from a syncretic pagan reenactment with a laurel wreath and a feather dangling from his battle axe.
I think we can click on the thing to see.
Yeah, let's see this. I want to see this picture. Okay, that is
it's just weird proportions.
Those are very weird proportions. Honestly, that art looks pretty shitty. I'm not gonna lie. This is clearly meant for tongue-in-cheek and silliness. Yeah.
Sure.
I see the Dark Angels emblem there. I see
Ultramarine.
Blood Ravens.
Oh, those are Blood Angels.
Oh, Blood Angel. Yeah, you're right. Some of these don't even look like Space Marines. They look too small for that.
Yeah, guys, I think this was before the time when they actually made Space Marines like the Emperors. Like,
Yeah, so, I mean... You know what? Okay, I'll take that. All right, hold on. You compare that. I'm going to look up some modern Warhammer art. Hold on. Let's compare. Let's compare and contrast. All right. This was your old one. Your Lost Patrol art. Got it. Let's see some new stuff. Let's see some new stuff. That looks pretty cool.
Yep,
That looks pretty cool. Let's find another one. Let's find another one. Oh, this one looks good.
I like it.
That looks sick. That looks really sick. Let's find another one.
Cool.
Pretty cool. Yep. I like that one. Let's find another. Oh, how about this one?
Hot dog.
Hot dog.
You get the Imperial Guard in there.
Yeah, that one looks sick. Let's see some more. Let's see some more art. See, I like this art. This is good art. Want to know why? It actually looks cool.
Yeah. Why do you hate things that are beautiful?
Oh, remember, the cult of beauty is a bad thing. Everything has to look ugly. We have to hate beauty. We have to hate good things. Ooh, Chaos Marines. Hey, throw some chaos into the mix.
I don't know. He probably likes the Chaos Marines just fine.
Oh, look at this one. This one looks pretty sick. Yeah, that looks pretty awesome. Yeah. And see, they even have the Mohawks here. They have some Mohawks here. Didn't you say that looked good? Don't you like the Mohawk? Why do you hate good things?
Well, clearly this person put effort into the article because of just the sheer amount of diction.
Anyway, how much more is this? Okay, one paragraph, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we're almost done, thank God. Doubtless, much of this can be grounded in particular gobbets of Space Marine backstory, but the impression I get looking back from 2024 is of a setting happy to lose and squander itself in the kinesis of its appropriations and transformations. Word salad! You want to know the funny thing about a salad? It doesn't taste like anything. You have to add dressing to it to make it taste good. You have to do that to enjoy a salad. But it's not the meat. It's not the meal. If you eat salad as your meal, you have to put something else on it to add to it. So you adding word salad thinking it's going to make me like you more? No, I'm waiting for the actual meal. Stop using big words you think make you sound intelligent. I can use big words too. But the fact is I don't want to because I have an audience that would like to understand what I'm saying. You using this, you're only going to lose a lot of people and it's only going to make you dislike them more.
Well, the thing is, if he was using big words and it made something coherent, fine. But the thing is, he's not using big words to be coherent. He's using it to substitute for the fact of any substance in his argument.
Correct. Again, like a salad.
One might even say that.
The guy up top performatively pointing a gun that is... Why are you still talking about the image? The guy up top performatively pointing a gun that is also pointing itself... The guy up top performatively pointing a gun that is also pointing itself... Let me see that. The guy up top pointing a gun that is also pointing... Oh, because the little arrow? Yeah, that's stupid. In fact, I'd say that this art is kind of stupid.
It's hokey.
Yeah, that was the point. Like, it feels like the mascot for early years of gluttonous and disorderly pastiche. By contrast, Warhammer 40,000 today evokes Stasis. It has compacted and reduced many of these desperate materials into something monolithic and ancient and respectable.
Heaven forbid be respectable.
Compare that artwork with Gallagher's last cover for the spin-off board game Lost Patrol. Okay, I'll pull it up. I'll compare it. Looks sick.
Yeah, pretty dang cool.
Looks pretty awesome. That looks awesome. So this is this is Lost Patrol. This is also Lost Patrol.
I like this one more.
I like this one more. Looks sick. Looks awesome. I like it. The matching uniforms, the interchangeable faces and sedate color composition, the impression of being overwhelmed that is oddly consistent with an almost supine sense of control, of mastery over encroaching legions of the other. Whatever energy was here is long gone. You don't see any energy here. Let's take a look at this again. What's the energy?
They're just walking down
They are walking down some stairs, looking brutal, carrying weapons. That's it. That's all we see here. Here, I see 5 men holding the line, outnumbered and overwhelmed against impossible odds, but still fighting all the same.
And based on their armor, it looks like they're scouts, too. meaning that they aren't full Space Marines yet.
So
Adds a little bit more to it.
there's energy here. There's actual tension here. I want to read this now. I want to get this book and read it. Death in the
game. I think it's a game.
Oh, it's a game? I want to see the game. I want to see that. That would probably be fun. That looks more fun than this. This, as I'm not an art critic, but I'm going to go ahead and give you my art-specific piece. This has too much going on at once without being able to give me any kind of idea of what's happening. We don't have any indication of what the Space Marines are fighting or what they're up against. We see them looking intimidating, but with no kind of sense of fear or danger of what they're being chased by. There's nothing going on in the foreground here that shows like an invasion or an attack. In fact, it looks really stale and very plain in comparison to the color discoordination of all this. There's no sense of uniformity, as you said, but you seem to like that. That's the thing. You seem to like that it has no cohesion. And you said it yourself. Fascism praises beauty. You don't like beauty. You like ugly. Well, you know what? This is ugly. I'm glad you like the ugly. This is ugly. So enjoy this. This is you. You enjoy old Space Marines. You enjoy this art. I will enjoy this art.
I don't think he's capable of enjoyment.
Agreed. Moving on. It is tricky to pick a patch through the entanglements of fascism with other culture institutions. It really is not. Just
don't be fascist. And you look at Space Marine 2, it wasn't fascist there.
The rot goes deep. Not really.
In your brain, yes.
One ready objection to the above praise for early 40k art is that fascists may be more dangerous when they seem totally daft and ramshackle. One ready objection to the above praise for early 40k art. So, one objection to 40k art in its early days, so the ugly, is that fascists may be more dangerous when they seem totally daft and ramshackle. No, I've never heard that. I've never heard that. Donald Trump is a clown. Take a drink. He brought up Trump. And the funny thing is, this clown is running circles around you, so he's easy to laugh at. Well, unlike Kamala Harris, who I just groan at. The post-Gamergate alt-right movement. God damn. We got to drink twice. They said alt-right. That helped elevate Trump into a god emperor, excel at
was a meme.
Excel at making bigotry seem harmless by presenting it as edgy humor, or even better at purposeful tastefulness as cringe. Weren't you the one praising early Space Marines for being,
he's saying that this is the one criticism of it. So
their basic debating gambit is to lambaste their opponents for taking things too seriously. Your whole article is that we shouldn't take Space Marines too seriously.
Your whole article is like, I want to go back to the old days when we didn't take Space Marines too seriously. Ironically, you have made that argument by taking this entire faction and this entire game too seriously.
Still, revisiting artworks like Lost Patrol feels like a good start for anybody genuinely committed to the notional anti-fascism of the Space Marine. Inasmuch as it dissolves today's concentrated noble killer into a hash of referencing smashed together in a manner that is, I think, genuinely countercultural because the mode of composition exhibits no respect for the military, for beauty, for the religious ecstasy of crowds, for empires. I just want to say, again, let me double check. Yeah, this was all one sentence. This whole paragraph was one run-on sentence. This fool may use a lot of big words, but he has no grammar skill whatsoever. But here's the part that gets me laughing my ass off. This last bit. You want people to look at stuff like this, to find things to enjoy about Space Marine that are not pro-fascist. Inasmuch as it dissolves today's concentrated noble killer into a hash of referencing smashed together in a manner that is, I think, genuinely countercultural because the mode of composition exhibits no respect for the military, for beauty, for the religious ecstasy of crowds, or for empire. So let me just be clear about the things that this person does not want to praise. Keep in mind, I'm going to bring the microphone closer. These are the things this idiot, this fool, this dunderhead, this narcissist. No, I take that back. He doesn't love anything about himself. This is what he doesn't want you to enjoy. The military. We cannot praise the military. Anything military is bad. Beauty. No. He hates beauty. He hates beauty. He wants everything to be ugly. That's why he wants women as the Space Marines, because then they'd be ugly. Everything has to be ugly. No praising of beauty. For the religious ecstasy of crowds, okay? He clearly hates church choirs. He clearly doesn't like going to church.
He doesn't like crowds either.
He doesn't like crowds. He doesn't like. He wants to hide in his room.
People together is bad for some.
Or for empires. I like Rome. I thought Rome did good.
Rome was pretty cool. It was, British Empire had some cool things going for it.
But yeah, so there we have it. No military bad, beauty bad, religion bad, people bad, empire bad. Well, now we see you for what you are. You sad little man. All right. Last paragraph. Looking at that posse of pantomime idiots touting their stupid prop, I find it hilarious that you're calling these stupid pantomime idiots and this is what you like. You enjoy the stupid pantomime idiots touting their stupid props. These mismatched fools glorifying in their own placelessness. These ciphers glued together from car boot salvage. I don't get a sense of masculine empowerment, a feeling being swept up into an imperial brotherhood of righteous loathing and suspicion. Instead, I see an ethos of self-deprecating abandon and, above all, an embrace of disparity with the things Space Marines are now known for. Patriarchal rage, absolute dominion, and destruction. Take a drink.
So, let me get this straight, big man. You don't like the new Space Marines because it makes you feel something good?
Reduced to gaudy foreground elements picked up and brandished like toys. I don't like these figures in the way that Saber Interactive would have us empathize with Titus and company in Space Marine 2, but I'm curious about them. I'd like to know where they're going. No, you don't! You don't want to know where these stupid goons are going. Let me be clear. Scrolling up, hold on. God, this was long. You. This Evans Thurwell. Let's pull this up. I want this known for the record. I pity you. I don't hate you. I pity you. Your existence is a farce. Your passions are beyond my understanding, and that's not a compliment because I don't understand what you find good. You looked at this and you said, I like this better than this. Why? Because this is making fun of fascism. Well, what does this image have to do with fascism? What does this image have to do with Nazism or fascism or Hitler or anything of that nature? This, from a complete outsider's perspective, they see humanity fighting against the alien. They see humanity fighting against a threat. That's what this is. That's what it's meant to be. And that's what people like about it. Humanity fighting against a threat. That's what they enjoy. Once upon a time, this was what Warhammer was. It was silliness, stupidity, a bunch of thugs, all that, and that's what you liked. Great, glad you liked it. Happy for you. Good on you. But it evolved. It changed. It no longer was about fascism. It no longer was about Thatcherism. It no longer was about Europe during the Cold War era. It was about this. Mankind against the threats of the galaxy. That's what it turned into. You can't stand it. And as you yourself admitted in the bottom of your stupid article, you hate military, you hate beauty, you hate religion, you hate loud crowds, and you hate empires.
You hate heroism.
You're from Yorkshire? How does it feel knowing that you are part of a former empire?
How does it feel knowing that you have the brains of the pudding?
This is outrageous. I've read some bad articles. I think you and I have looked at some shit.
Yeah.
This takes the cake. I think this is one of the worst things we've ever read.
The biggest issue I have here is when he's like, my masculinity is a wound. And I'm like...
That should tell you all you need to know about
it. So you hate being masculine. You hate being a man. And every other man should hate himself too. Because apparently if you like masculine things, you're now a fascist.
I like how he says that he watched that trailer and it made him feel masculine pride and he hated that. He felt masculine pride for a moment and he hated it. Because he thinks that masculine pride is fascist and fascism is out to destroy him. I've never met a sadder case. Ladies, if I have any ladies in my chat, any ladies in my chat, would you be interested in a guy like this? Would you care about a guy like this? Would you want a guy like this? Men in my audience, do you agree with a guy like this? That we should hate our own masculinity? That we should flee from the fascism of masculine pride? That we should flee... But you know what? It goes back to what we said earlier. The guy in the corner, though it is an actual Nazi that no one cared about, but when you compare everyone else to him, oh, you're all like him, you're all Nazis. Why? Because you're in the same room as him. You value the same things as him. After a while, yeah. Go back to that Incredibles quote, when everyone's fascist, no one will be. Now it's very hard to tell the real fascists out there. It's hard to tell the true, because there are real white supremacists and fascists in the world. They exist. I'm not saying they don't.
Actually, they're pretty blatant about it.
Yeah, they want you to know it. The problem is they're trying to let you know it because they don't want to be compared to people like us. And yet you would compare us to them. See, that's the thing. The real white supremacists and the fascists want you to know they are. But how can you tell them when you're pointing at everyone and saying they're fascists?
It's a child's guide to debating. Everyone that disagrees with me is Hitler.
This was a pain in the ass. This was a pain, but I'm glad we finally got through it. Lark, do you have any last words you want to say before we close out?
Yeah, I think I speak for most men in the room when we play stuff like Halo, Space Marine, Warhammer, or anything that's like very cool, gets your blood pumping, all that jazz. We're not doing it because we want to join the Third Reich. We're not doing it because we're secretly fascist or we have fascist underpinnings. We're doing it because it's fun. We're doing it because we're hanging out with our bros, having a good time. We're doing it because we look at this and go, as crappy as their situation is what we're doing, they inspire hope and heroism. And you know, that may not be much in a modern setting, but it's something that we can go, I can get behind that. To quote something from Lord of the Rings, there's good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for.
I will say this, and then I'll close this out. I do not love Space Marines or Warhammer 40,000's Imperium of Man because fascism. I don't love it, even because it makes me feel more masculine. That's not the reason. Because honestly, one of my favorite factions is the Sisters of Battle, and they are all women. The reason I love the Imperium of Man is because I adore stories of self-sacrifice, of, heroes fighting for other people, of standing up against evil, fighting for the preservation of others, giving of yourself so that others can live. I'm a helpless romantic. I love stories of a man or woman standing up defiantly against an impossible enemy just so that one other person could live. When I read the story of Saint Celestine and saw what she goes through just to fight for mankind, despite the difficulty, despite the fact that there are many who hate her, it moved me to near tears. When I read the story of Lionel Johnson coming back to the Imperium and seeing what happened to the Imperium and seeing what became of his sons and all the mistakes he made, and then what he was willing to do to bring them all back together, even shame himself, lower himself, it moved me. When I read about Space Marines and Guardsmen fighting and giving of themselves so that someone else can live, it is inspiring. Ordo Manus just said in the chat, I like this and I want to address it before we go. Most people can't even define fascism. My favorite definition is Mussolini's. Everything in the state, everything for the state, and nothing against the state. Well, you know what? Replace the word state with humanity, and you might be right, it's fascism. But at the end of the day, I don't see the Imperium of Man fighting for the state. I see them fighting for the race. And you know what? That's why Warhammer 40k works. Because it's in a setting where Space Marines, Sisters of Battle, Primarchs are essential. They're needed. Otherwise, mankind couldn't exist. This is not satire anymore. And this article writer knows it's not satire anymore, and that's what makes him so angry. He wants it to be satire. He is contradicting himself because on the one hand, he's aware it's no longer satirical, but he thinks it still is satirical to the point that it needs to change. What he thinks has happened is the original idea of Space Marine 2, or Space Marines in general, is that it was satirical, but they've shifted away from the satire. They need to go back to it. No. It is not shifted away from the satire. It has evolved beyond the satire. it's become something new and something that many, many people love. This writer has no idea why we love Space Marines, why we love Warhammer. He has no idea. He thinks he does. And the fact that he said that he's a casual enjoyer of it, I don't believe that for a heart. I don't believe that for a minute. I don't believe that for a nanosecond. And I'm not even a super lore expert, okay? I'm no Major Kill. I'm no Pancreas No Work. I'm not these people who know the lore so well that they can do a lot of videos on it. But even I understand why people get caught up in this setting. Even I understand why people love it so much. Anyway, I think that's going to do it for us. What do you think?
I think that wraps it up.
I think we've said everything we possibly can. Well, guys, I know this was a long one. I know this was a rough one. I appreciate you all for sticking with us. This was a little impromptu. We'll probably get a little bit of hate for this one if they have the stomach to watch all the way through it.
Yeah, that's going to assume a lot, though, isn't it?
Yeah, well, if we do get the hate, well, they're clearly heretics, and they will be found by their...
If they give us the hate, it'll likely because they didn't even watch it, and they just commented.
Yep, that sounds about right. Anyway, thank you guys so much, and as always, we will see you in the next video.
Take care.